The right people come together at the right moment, when they care almost as much about winning as they do about each other. They can become the best of the best.
Welcome to the best soccer show. The best soccer show in the whole world.
Here we go. It's the best soccer show. Jason Davis holding it down for you on this Wednesday evening here in wherever you are. I'm in Virginia, wherever you are. Thank you for coming by and hanging out with me. If you're live, if you're a live person. I mean, not if you're
When the
live
right people
person.
come together at the right
do it again.
moment,
Everybody,
when
hold
they
on.
care almost
Hold
as
on.
much about winning.
Everybody, hold on. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn off the loop, and that's what happens. Let's check all the technology. Everybody's got me. I see Frank's in here. What's up, Frank? Frank, you said you hear clicking. Was that me moving around, maybe? Jason's here. Shout out to Jason. Jared's kid is having one heck of a birthday party 1 week in county. This is not a birthday party week. I think there's something else going on with Jay Rodius, who could not be here. Yes, shout out. My apologies.
Jay Rodius.
Do I have to apologize for Jared not being here tonight? Well, okay, let's take care of that business before we get to what we're going to get to this evening. So Jared is otherwise indisposed. Not going to go into why at the moment. I actually don't know the whole story, but stay tuned for updates on that front. Obviously, the Bus Soccer Show has been through some stuff. If you're an OG, like if you're original, if you're day one, you know we've been through some stuff on this show. Who knows what year the Best Soccer Show started? It's a little quick quiz for everybody listening live. Who knows what year we did the first ever episode of the Best Soccer Show? I'm waiting for the chat to catch up to me. I'm a little behind. I've got a fill here. Let me see if I can maybe get us. Okay. Well, we're waiting. Anybody know? Anybody know? Anybody hear me? Nobody hears me. Nobody knows. Okay. So the first ever Best Soccer Show. Okay. Here we go. Jackie says 2012. That was the first guess. Close. Not correct. I see 2013 from Jason. I see a 2009. 2009. Ooh. Yeah. No, actually, 2011. Trooper Barry's got it right. 2011. It says off the ashes of the American Soccer Show. Yeah. Yeah, that's some throwback memories right there. In fact, I was thinking about the old days. Like the days of old. What is it that they say at the beginning of Voltron? Whatever they say at the beginning of Voltron. That's sometimes that's how long ago it feels sometimes. You're like, man, that was a long time ago when we did the first ever episode of the Best Soccer Show. And the reason to talk about the past today, like the reason to go back to 2011, is because today something momentous happened in American soccer media. And I do think we're going to end up with one of our old friends is going to come by and help me with this discussion in a couple of minutes. And I imagine he will have some thoughts. We did have some gap years. Yes, Jackie, we did have some gap years. 2 or 3 of them, maybe more. I'm trying to recall. We went a while. The story of the Best Soccer Show is obviously we launched in 2011. Actually, the first ever thing that Jared and I did together was the old American Soccer Show. That ended, and then we ended up with the Best Soccer Show. We did one episode of something called Free on a Bosman, which we were like in between the like companies, kind of. We weren't making like crazy money or anything, but we did have a moment there. So then we did the Best Soccer Show, and then obviously you guys know we had a little burnout. Things changed in our lives, and we paused the Best Soccer Show. Paused it because we came back, which at the time I didn't know we were going to come back. Like I didn't know it was going to happen again. In fact, for a while, and I know there are some people out there who still ask for this. For a while, we did Slop Culture, which was me and Jared talking about pop culture things, movies, books, of things of that nature, things that were out there in the culture. This is man, it's a long time ago that we did that too. Oh man, you guys want to see something embarrassing? I'm gonna talk about current day stuff here in a second. But since we're sharing, I guess we're sharing while I wait for our guest to arrive, and while I think about the past, and while I ponder how I'm going to frame up a discussion about the thing that happened in American soccer media today. Why don't we do a little blast from the past? We can see something that is very man, I don't know. I really don't know how to talk about this because it feels like a different life. It feels like I look at this and I think, hey, that's a different person. Gonna put this on the stage. there's there's your friend Jason and Jared looking a little different than we do now. Looking a little different than we do now. I'm gonna try. I have this muted, so I don't want to blast you guys with any of the audio. There's Jared up close. There's me. This was wow. This is a long time ago. This is when my son, who's about to go to college, was 3 years old. I think he had 3.5, maybe he was at this point. He's the voice that you actually still hear at the beginning of the Best Soccer Show. Like you can still hear his voice. That's Ethan. Ethan is 17. He'll be 18 in 3 months, and he's getting ready to go to college. We're like figuring all that stuff out. So yeah, this is a long time ago. I was baby faced. I had no beard. I think I had the beard and I shaved it off for some reason. Oh look, we had actual highlights in that show. Chuck Blazer. We talked about Chuck Blazer in that show. I'm hanging out very close to that microphone, mostly because I don't want you to see how terrible I look. I also think, man, I was skinny. Wow. All right, enough of that nonsense, right? Let's move on. Let's go back to talking about the day that we're living at the moment. So today, Matt Doyle announced on Blue Sky. I'm going to guess he did it on Twitter. I don't live on Twitter anymore, so I don't know if things happen over there the same way they do on Blue Sky. But he announced on Blue Sky that he was no longer with MajorLeagueSoccer.com, MLSsoccer.com, which I have jokingly referred to as Major League Soccer.com, because MLS and soccer makes it redundant. It's like saying ATM machine, and it was terrible. But neither here nor there. Matt Doyle is moving on. He's no longer part of that organization. And of course, this is after several other departures, right? They didn't renew Dave Gass. They didn't renew Tom Bogert. They had these people covering the league on their website for a long time and have decided that they don't need any of them, and they've dropped them. And I know Matt has a dedicated following, and I know he's going to be fine. He posted that he's taking his now Ghost newsletter. He's turning that into a monetized product, right? He's monetizing his newsletter. And obviously he needs to do that because he no longer has MLSsoccer.com as an income stream. Now I see Jackie saying he should do more soccer-wise stuff. He's already been announced officially as a new member of the Soccer-wise Kickback Media team. So yeah, that's a thing he'll be doing. You don't have to worry about that. And I guess this is just an opportunity for me. And again, I think our guest, when he arrives, will also be talking about this with me, because he goes back long enough ago to know a lot of the same things I do about the state of American soccer media and where we've come. And so I was thinking about this today in light of what Matt announced, that I remember. I'm old enough to remember when we were debating as an American soccer blogging community. God, those words make me feel old too. As an American soccer blogging community, we were debating whether it was good for Major League Soccer to cover itself. Right? We were having debates back and forth on then Twitter. I'm sure I wrote posts about it on MatchFit USA or wherever else I was writing. I know that I had back and forth with various people that are still in soccer and some people that I don't know what happened to them. Some people who were writing anonymously. Raise your hand if you remember fake Siggy Schmid. That's a blast from the past. Fake Siggy had some very strong opinions about MLS covering itself. And although Fake Siggy and I had many, many run-ins when we were just baby bloggers, when I looked like I looked in that video I just showed you, we agreed on that. We agreed for the most part that we didn't like it, that MLS was going to be covering itself. Right? I'm giving you the whole thing. I'm not covering up for any of my previous opinions because I don't think it would be right for me to massage the past. Right? So back in 2011, 2009, 2008 is when I started my first blog, December of 2008. So let's call it 2009. I started my blog in 2008-9. I started my first podcast in early 2009. Obviously, by 2011, I'm doing the Best Soccer Show. I believe either MatchFit USA was still there and on its last legs, or I was closing it down. I don't remember the exact date that I shut down MatchFit USA. What happened was the podcasting, the success we had with the Best Soccer Show, and then writing gigs I had gotten on the back of MatchFit USA meant I could no longer do the blogging. But I was still obviously there, very involved in the blogging community. It's where a lot of us came from. And we heard there was news, an announcement. Major League Soccer was starting an editorial arm for their website. Now, people who paid closer attention to Major League Baseball at the time will know better than me, but I think this is right around the same time Major League Baseball was doing this same thing, right? Bringing some names in-house to cover the league for the league's website. And from a journalistic perspective, there are issues with this. Like, I don't think you need to have your hand held to understand what those issues might be, right? There is a distinct conflict of interest here when the league is paying people to cover the league, because can those people be truly neutral, truly unbiased, and in certain circumstances be critical of the league, of the clubs, of whatever, in a way that serves the fans of the league? Like, that was the question at the time. That's what we were debating. Like I said, myself and others came down on the side of, we don't like this. Rabble, rabble, rabble. We don't like this. Now, again, I'm stretching my memory out here a bit, but I do remember those early days. Greg Lawless was involved. Simon Borg was involved. Jason Sagini was on camera. If you guys remember Jason, who I think still works at MLS, but not in a editorial capacity. At least I don't think so. And it became, and Andrew Wiebe came in. I know that was fairly early in that process as well. I don't know exactly when Wiebe joined. And I remember, I guess that we just all kind of got used to it, right? Like, I think there was this sense that, hey, this isn't exactly what we want. We don't really want it to be that our soccer league is covering itself. We don't really want this to be a question of whether or not there are truly honest voices covering the league. And remember that at the time, and then I have to consider my position at the time, right? I am a blogger / freelance writer / podcaster, not working full-time in soccer. Not even close, actually, at the time. Right? I was stealing hours from my real job to make soccer content, which I don't even think we were calling it content back then. Is that a thing? Were we calling it content in 2011? So it was like a not a great situation that the league was doing this. And yet again, and I was somebody who was looking for work. Let's just put it that way. And that obviously biased me towards this idea of like, oh, well, this means there's going to be less things out there for those of us who want to work covering the league. Or, again, if you think about the way the Major League Soccer was growing at the time, you can also understand why MLS chose to do this. MLS chose to create an editorial arm for itself because they felt like nobody was doing the work of covering the league the way they wanted it covered, right? And I was writing for ESPN on a freelance basis and picking up a little bit of work here and there. There were others out there. I see our guest has arrived. I will get him on on camera here in a second because I know he has thoughts about this. And I'm not sure I have a point. I'm not sure I'm getting anywhere other than just to explain what I was feeling at the time. And to say that obviously, whatever my feelings were back then, and whatever impact Major League Soccer covering itself had on the soccer industry and the soccer media industry, and we could argue about that. It's not anybody's fault who worked there, right? It's not ultimately Matt Doyle's fault, not ultimately Andrew Reeby's fault. It's not ultimately Simon Borg's fault or anybody else who has written or covered Major League Soccer for MLSsoccer.com. In fact, at one point, I was offered a job writing for MLSsoccer.com on a weekly basis. And I turned it down because it wasn't a good work-life balance choice for me. It was a freelance gig. It wasn't full-time. I was going to be a contract employee. It would have meant spending my weekends working in the evenings on a Saturday. And I had a young family at the time, and I said, I don't think that's the best thing for me. But I would have happily taken that job if it wasn't going to impact my, at that point, fairly new relationship with my now wife. So I'm not trying to lord over this and be all judgy about MLSsoccer.com, because what ended up happening is that did fill a void for a lot of people. And certainly there's excellence in the coverage that they provided. And Matthew Doyle is an example of that. Right? Matt Doyle is somebody who enriched people's experience with Major League Soccer through his writing. And that's why there was so much response today, certainly from the industry. So speaking of the industry, let's bring in this gentleman. You might know him from, well, this show a lot, but also from the Philadelphia Inquirer and from asking pertinent questions of soccer figures through the years. JTT is back on the show. What's up, John? How are you?
Hi, Jason. How are you?
Well, I'm talking through my feelings a little bit here.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I can tell.
It's a difficult thing to do because I have a full-time I have a well-paid soccer job in the sense that it is my full-time job. I'm not going to pretend like I love every aspect of it because I still don't have health insurance, John, but it is what it is, right? And so I don't love being like, it makes it difficult for me to kind of maybe frame this up in a way that is fair to every party. But again, at the time that MLS Soccer decided to have an editorial team, it was not like everybody was just like, yay, this is great. And now yet here we are 15 years later going, how dare they kill this off? It's just, I'm fascinated by that change.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. And I guess I should probably start here by acknowledging something. I've never done any work for MLS Soccer. I have no intention of ever doing any work for MLS Soccer. And I've told them this over the years because I had some conversations with them too. I said, I will not do this unless you write editorial independence into my contract in the way that MLB.com and NHL.com and writers have. And I knew they weren't going to do it. I've always known they weren't going to do it. And so I'm not happy at their reductions of things. Less content is usually bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have unfortunately reached a point in society where I can no longer say that less content is universally bad, but in this context, less content is bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, look, it is not a service to the fan or to the casual follower when the league itself is not doing the work of promoting its own stuff.
Right.
And that is what this comes down to for me.
Yeah, right. You've normalized people to the idea that the place to go for coverage of the league is the league, which again, we can talk about the knock-on effect of that. I'm maybe not in the best position to speak to that because I haven't been looking for freelance work actively. I haven't been, working where ESPN or Fox or any other places that are doing work. I'm not blogging. I wasn't blogging in a way meant to bring me recognition or money. So I feel weird about talking about that part of this, but you have normalized people to, hey, if you want good coverage of Major League Soccer, you go to MLSsoccer.com. And then they pull the rug out from everybody, John. That's a problem.
I don't agree with every word you just said, and I think you know which word I disagree with. But what I was trying with the way I see it through a slightly different lens, I think, is good choice of beer, by the way. If you as a league need to get attention for yourself because you are struggling to get national television ratings and local television ratings and so on, which is not the case for Major League Baseball and not the case for the NFL and the NBA and the NHL. And the first thing you can do is promote your own work by having content on your own website. Now, it might not be completely objective content, which is the word that I disagree with you about.
Did I say
But it's
objective?
content nonetheless. No, I quibble with, I have over the years quibbled with the quality of it.
Okay. No. And here's the thing. Look, you have
good.
to do. Well, okay. All right. Well, you have
And
to
that's
do a
your
little work.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, look, everybody knows this about John Tannenwald. John Tannenwald is a newspaper man. John Tannenwald is a true-blooded reporter, right? We know this about you, John, and I respect that about you. And I don't come from at it from exactly the same angle. I didn't go to J school. I've never worked in a newsroom. Like, these are things I had to learn on the fly. Now, I have a sense of the ethics of the job, right? Having read newspapers my entire life, having followed the stories, having wanted to do that work, I appreciate that part of it. But and when I say good, what I mean is, okay, there is certainly an idea that that would be better if somebody like Matt Doyle was able to do what he did for MLSsoccer.com for a third party.
Yes.
For a different body.
That's what I mean.
Now, would he have written differently? I don't know. We can ask him. We might find out, right? We might find out if Matt Doyle has a different approach to his job now that he is no longer being paid by Major League Soccer. It could be, right? But what I was kind of implying here is that nobody denies that Matt Doyle knows his shit.
Correct.
So
correct.
When Matt Doyle is maybe constrained a little bit, you're not getting maybe everything you want, and maybe you aren't getting 100% objectivity, and he's probably being edited in places or being careful, which is even worse if he's being careful in places that we wouldn't want him to. But if the option is there's no Matt Doyle and there's nobody doing the kind of writing he does, which I'm not equipped to do, right? I'll be the first one to hold up my hand and say, I don't want to write like Matt Doyle. And I need Matt Doyle as the kind of writer I am and the kind of journalist I am and the kind of talker I am. I need a Matt Doyle out there in the world. So that's my point. When I say good, that's what I mean. And again, it's relative to the environment we're in, because you can't just wish into existence a different Matt Doyle writing for a different organization.
And I want to clarify something. In pushing back on the word good, I really did not want to throw everybody there under the bus. That was not my intention at all. And I want to make sure I say that clearly before people come after me for it, because there was a lot of good content that was done on the website by Matt, by Charlie Bohm, who's a friend of both of ours, by John Arnold over the years, by a lot of other people who I know in Philadelphia and across the country. And there were times when they had some really people with really actual journalistic chops doing match reports for them on site and other stuff like that. My issue is a bigger picture one of there were oftentimes when I, again, as a professional cynic, grouch, official journalist, etc., could not always take every word of the content at face value, and that's why I have been prone to calling it content. But it was very often well written. And again, my complaint is both about getting rid of good people, which I don't like.
Yes, right.
And about the fact that you are a sports league. Your first job is to promote yourself so that people know you exist. And any of these entry points may be a way to draw somebody in so that they watch your games. If you're doing less of that, I have a problem.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Of course. I mean, it's kind of difficult to remember the times before MLS had the editorial department. Obviously it's been, I guess I said, it's been whittled down over the years, right? And now this feels like I know Andrew's not writing anymore, right? So Andrew Reeby's only doing television work as a sideline reporter, as far as I'm aware. I'll admit, I don't go over there for MLS coverage. I read Doyle stuff. That's it. I read Doyle stuff, and I pretty much don't pay attention. Now, this is also, and again, this is kind of while this is weird, and you guys are getting very unvarnished Jason tonight, by the way. And I even DM'd Matt today about this. My lane has been shifted, not because I chose to shift it, but because the people who pay most of the money I bring into my household chose to shift my lane. And it meant I drifted away from MLS in a way that I don't like, but I'm not sure I can fix, but it makes me feel a little detached from this. So I'm glad that you're here, John, because I think, again, I want to be able to talk about this stuff. And I don't think there's a lot of people who can go back to the days before MLSsoccer.com was Weeby and Doyle and Bohm and Arnold, and and Borg, and I'm missing a bunch of people, obviously, who are critical to that, who are part of that team. It just, and I guess one of the things to talk about is whether we are in a good place. And I mean, it's easy for us as people on the inside of the business to say, definitely not. We're definitely not.
We're not. We are not. No, for other reasons that I will get into in a moment. And I think you know what they are.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So this comes to me again, it circles around the point of, if you are not for yourself, then who is, to quote the old proverb in my neck of the religious woods.
Sure.
The Washington Post, which, as Paul Kennedy very eloquently pointed out, has done more for soccer coverage in mainstream American media than any other news outlet in the history of the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has been destroyed.
Destroyed, yes.
By one guy who runs Amazon and one guy who used to run the Telegraph, and there are a whole lot of words that I can use.
Well, the guy that ran the Telegraph is gone already, which is an interesting corollary to the story.
Yes.
Addition to the story. You and I are obviously very emotionally connected to that story,
right?
And
it's not just them. It's not just the Post.
No. It's clearly not. It's clearly not. And again, this is the story of soccer media. Is the story of journalism, the story of media, the story of long-standing legacy houses or shops that have been either shut down, consolidated, stripped down to nothing, instead of having full-time writers and reporters in-house, are now staffed by freelancers or charlatans or whatever, or bots or AI. I mean, the thing about the Post story, since you bring it up, and obviously we knew that the soccer coverage at the Post had fundamentally changed when Stephen Goff took his buyout and decided to walk away and ended up at Yahoo. Thank God for that. We could talk about Brian Strauss. We won't probably that much, because I don't know Brian would like us to. Brian Strauss is part of that story. Thomas Floyd is part of that story in the last decade. So, those people are people we respect and believe should be covering soccer. And the Post decided, well, we really don't need you anymore. But that's a big issue across an industry. And go ahead, because I'm not sure where I'm going with that, and I want to make sure. No,
you're right, but I'm going to put a couple more examples on the table, and a lot of them involve friends of mine and some friends of yours. The Orlando Sentinel had a track record of Paul Tenorio, who we both know, Julia Poe, who interned at the Philadelphia Inquirer in college, is now at the Chicago Tribune covering the Bulls, Jordan Culver, Alicia Roman now, I should say. A long track record, a serious track record of covering Orlando City and the Pride as a beat at the paper. And I had people in the industry asking me, how do they do it? And my answer was, they choose to. The Cincinnati Enquirer had Pat Brennan. The Nashville Tennessean had Drake Hills.
Mm-hmm.
The Oregonian in Portland has had Jamie Goldberg and Ryan Clark. The Seattle Times had Jada Evans. And Matt Pence, obviously, before he went to the Athletic. And they are not now fulfilling the demand that exists in their markets for soccer coverage. I'm a stubborn mule, which is part of why the Philadelphia Inquirer does in its market. But you look around New York, all the papers in New York and North Jersey, where is it? Chicago, never been for 30 years, the worst offender of the lot. And I'm somebody who buys the Tribune and the Sun sometimes every time I fly through O'Hare because I have friends who work for both papers and I want to support them. And I buy the LA Times when I'm out there because of Kevin Baxter, and the Miami Herald when I'm in Miami because of Michelle Kaufman, who was covering soccer when there was no soccer to cover.
Right. Yeah.
In Miami.
Yeah.
And what it will come to this summer, as I finalize my plans for where I'm going to be, which I can't talk all entirely in public about yet, but we may all wonder together, wherever we are in the country, what is the size of the press pack with the U.S. national team at the World Cup on a daily basis going to be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because some entities that we might have assumed in the past would be there might not. Yeah. And some entities that we might have thought might not be there might be. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But it's a question that a whole lot of us are talking about because we don't know.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely a worthwhile question. I mean, again, coming back to, and you know, I've talked sort of development of media because I've lived it. I need to sit down and really collect my thoughts and maybe organize them a little bit on some of this stuff. It's one of those things like, do you wonder if people care? But, you know, the story of American soccer media is also the story of American soccer. And as we've watched Major League Soccer grow, I mean, the valuations for the franchises just came out yesterday from Sportico, and it's, you know, $1.5 billion for Inter Miami. And you're like, well, that's great.
It's a lot of asking prices, isn't it?
What does it mean? And then
what is a lot of asking prices for teams going up for sale.
We you know, if we rewind the clock and go back, and I just have to make it, you know, my point of view, my experience when I sort of entered this world, when I launched a blog in 2008, and I do think timing is so much of my story, and I acknowledge that, right? I think I'm pretty good at what I do, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't good at it and all those things. I'm not denying that I have some talent, but I have to recognize that timing and luck is part of the story. I go back to 2008, 2009, and I was able to launch a little blog on Blogspot, write some things that I thought about American soccer, write some things about some MLS teams, and get enough attention that I got work out of that almost immediately, right? And get enough attention that I, you know, got up for an award or something. I lost to Ivis because everybody lost to Ivis, but you know, those things, that was unique and interesting. It wasn't ideal, right? I needed it. It was good for me, but it wasn't ideal in terms of what we want for soccer. And if you sat at that moment and went, well, imagine what we'll be in 15, 20 years. It's going to be incredible. We're going to have so many people covering this sport, and we'll have so many new outlets interested in this, whether they are newspapers who hadn't done it before, or, I mean, I guess at the time, John, I don't know what you were thinking back in 2009, 2011, but I guess the sense was, while it was nice all these blogs existed and we all could democratize content and coverage, ultimately that wasn't the ideal. We wanted professional organizations to be paying people to cover soccer. And yet here we are in 2025, or 26 rather, and I don't think, number one, professional organizations are not paying enough people to cover soccer, certainly for our tastes, and I would argue not enough to give people what they need, what they want. And you can't even really start a blog and get any attention now. I mean, you can't just start a website out of nowhere. I give you know, Joe Lowry and those guys some credit, but outside of that, it's really difficult.
Well, and let me say to that, I think about people like, again, myself, Paul, Jeff Kassouf, and Meg Linehan on the women's side, both of whom have been at this for a long time and who I've known for many, many years, since 2009, 10, as you mentioned, and in Meg's case, I think before that, where so many people around the media industry have come to us and said, oh, surely 2026 with the World Cup coming here is when, you know, all these organizations are going to expand their soccer coverage and finally go out and hire people and so on and so forth. And my response has been, well, they can let us know. We've all been waiting. The Guardian did it, to their credit, to their great credit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
they got some money. They have a guy in Alex Avnos who knows
his shit. Yeah,
knows what to do with it and where to
yeah,
take a section and how to deliver stuff that people want to read and that cuts through and is of quality.
yeah,
But otherwise,
yeah.
not a ton.
Yeah, man, there's a lot here. So I'm glad that Pablo and Jeff and that crew, who did I miss
Ella
over
Broadway,
there?
who had
Ella.
left the Washington Post and is now
Right, also a Washington Post writer. I'm glad they are there. I obviously trust Alex. I know Alex. Alex is good at what he does. That's great. We obviously still have the Athletic for what it is. Remember what it was originally supposed to be
right.
was something very different than what it is. But Paul's there, and Tom's there, and that's that's something that's good, I guess. And I know I'm just doing a take stock situation. Jeff is still at ESPN. We won't talk about his status, his exact official status at ESPN, but Jeff is still at ESPN.
Carlisle for people who are hearing many Jeffs.
Sorry, Jeff Carlisle. Yes.
Yes.
I thought people were going to connect that. Doug McIntyre, a guy who at various points has been without a job, which is insane to me, ends up at Fox and is there. We know Stephen Goff is going to cover the national team, the World Cup for Yahoo. I've already name checked one incredible soccer writer who's been out of a job for a while now, who probably has been done the dirtiest by all of this. I think about young writers too, John. I think about people coming up who want to cover this sport. And I know there are people hustling. Like I know, you've got independent websites. I mentioned that. I said blogs are tough. That individual stuff is tough. But if you can get in, or if you're one of those people, Jeremiah O'Shan is probably one of the leading lights in American soccer simply because he's got a business that works for what he's doing with Sounder at Heart. The Nashville Enterprise, what's the name of their website, John?
615 or whatever it is.
615 Soccer. I know they're doing Ben Wright. Yeah, Ben Wright and his crew. They're doing good stuff there. Again, I don't know. I mean, is it all bad, or is there some good here? Again, having Matt Doyle independent, he's going to be able to take his newsletter to Ghost and make money, and people will pay for it, and that's good. He deserves to be paid for the work he does, and we need him doing the work he does. All right, at least I believe that. But obviously, it's not ideal that he has to go and do one, his own thing, a Substack essentially, and try to get paid for it to make a living. So I don't know. It's all very messy right now, and I wish it was.
That's a double entendre that I really like, because in the league's perspective, that to me that is part of the problem here.
Right. No, you're right. You're right.
And look, I grew up in an era of believing that, and I'm going to ask you to, first of all, hello to Nick Murray, who knows that I am a couple bridges over from where he is in Tampa right now. Which
he's already threatened to knock down your hotel room door.
He's welcome to come by if he'd like to. He's not far away. I'm in Clearwater Beach, Florida, for people who don't know, covering the Philadelphia Union's preseason, which is another example of my employer's willingness to spend some money on soccer, which I appreciate. There's a comment from Spiders Lotown a few minutes back that says, "I love golf." And if you see that, I don't have the power to put the comments up, but you do. I want to point that one out for a couple reasons. The first of which is, I grew up in an era, and Jason, you did too, where we would have believed that the best writer on a given sports team in a town, in a city, would deserve to be at the local newspaper eventually.
Yeah, sure, yes.
In theory, Ben Wright should be writing for the Tennessean, and Jeremiah O'Shan for the Seattle Times. I know that Jeremiah is listening. I know that's not going to happen because I know his history of newspapers. But as a theory goes, that the best journalist, writer, reporter, etc., in town should eventually make their way to the beat for the local paper, because that is the pinnacle. It's not anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I'll just to interrupt. I think I imagine myself doing what Grant Wall did obviously he was ahead of me and had the chops and went to the great school and did all the things in basketball before he moved to soccer. And we've also lost that, by the way. And that's not because we lost Grant, although we lost Grant. It's
We lost
because
Sports Illustrated.
we lost Sports Illustrated, which is a husk. It's nothing. It's nothing compared to. And very quickly, just because again, stream of consciousness and getting things out. What I think about when I think about what I want it to be and why I want it to be it, I think about the Washington Post. And yes, eventually that became golf. But when I was a kid, it was Kornheiser, it was Wilbon, it
Sure.
was Thomas
William,
Boswell,
Bill Gilday, Liz Clark, Will
Liz Clark.
Coons.
Yes,
Will
absolutely.
Coons wrote for the Washington Post for years before he went into the management side of the sport. Obviously, Brian Strauss did, among a number of things, he did at the Post for a number of years. And so, how many people, and I've said this a million times on this show, Jason, and it's the part that hit a lot of us deepest about Steve's end at the Post and why we're all so glad that he's now at Yahoo. How many people grew up in the Washington area wanting to do that who are now in the soccer media?
Yeah. Well,
Myself, Paul, Emily Olson, Jason Anderson, Sebastian Salazar, yourself, Ian Quillen, a friend of mine who's written for a bunch of places. The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And we all read the Post every day.
If you guys can handle a little bit more navel gazing, at one point, and this is got to be 10 years ago now that we've done it, it was certainly pre-COVID. And because Jonathan was in Philly, he wasn't an attendee, but you would have been if you were local. But at one point, it was generally Pablo who would send out the bat signal or do the call or the email, and it would say something like, "We need to get together. There needs to be a gathering," and we would all go to one of Pablo's favorite dives in up there in Northwest, wherever he was living, and we would sit around and we would talk shop and bitch about people in the industry. And it was me, and it was Brian, and it was Charlie, and it was Thomas, and it was Seth Vertelny, who also deserves to be mentioned here.
Yes.
It was Avi was there, I think.
Avi Creditor lives in DC for a while. Yep.
Yeah, I'm probably missing 3 or 4 or 5 other people that were there. It was kind of nuts, and it felt like, as much as we were complaining, right, and as much of us as all of us were sort of on freelance contracts or gathering up little bits here or there. This is pre-Athletic, I think, even, or maybe it was just after it happened. This is Pablo writing for DCist and me writing for ESPN and US Soccer Players, and Charlie Boehm doing 6 things to make a living and all of that stuff. But it still felt like, oh, this is cool. We're all doing this. And we are helping to push American soccer coverage forward. And now here we are today. And I'm thankful again that Alexander Abnos hired Pablo, so we have him covering American soccer actively. We need that. I'm glad Seth Vertelny has still got a job in the industry. What is Pro Soccer Wire, but they might have just made it. So I guess they dropped the Pro Soccer Wire, the USA Today situation. That I'm glad those things happened, and there are lots of people that are still in the business that were part of those powwows. But Nate Scott, by the way, I also want to mention Nate Scott. But a lot of them, but people also drifted away, right? People also couldn't do it anymore, and we lost a lot. Like, I hope people understand that. Like, not just because we lost, Matt Doyle got let go by MLS Soccer. That's an indication of something significant. Lots of very talented people, maybe didn't even get to where they should have gotten to because the opportunities weren't available to them. It's not from lack of talent. It's from lack of opportunity, lack of jobs.
Matt Pence is out.
Yeah.
And I will say, by the way, living a much happier life now than he did when he was a journalist. But he's out. Drake Hills is out. Ben Rycroft in Toronto is out. A bunch of people I know in Montreal are out. People I know in Vancouver are out. It is everywhere, and it's a problem. And when it now reaches the point, to bring it back to where we've been, that not even the league can sustain financially a content operation, then there are not many places where I can say this aloud, but this is one of them. Maybe the public has to look itself in the eye and say, wait a minute, well, how much of this is our fault?
Yeah, well, okay. So and this is going to get into some big picture media things that are tougher to talk about from a significantly knowledgeable perspective. I get a little uncomfortable because there are just a lot of unknowns here. Because you could say there is certainly an issue with the way that people expected their coverage to be delivered, or maybe they weren't willing to pay for newspapers anymore and things like that, right? I imagine an old newspaper, you're not old, John, but an old newspaper guy is going to say people stop paying for newspapers, and that's part of the problem. But that's an impact of the internet turning out free content for everybody. I mean, again, and it's also somebody mentioned the pivot to video earlier. We could do a whole podcast episode on the pivot to video.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
And how that just wrecked things for about 5 years, like absolutely destroyed. People were putting
money. It's still wrecking things, believe me.
I'm going to tell you, I mean, I was this, and it would have been video, which is fascinating that this is what happened, but I was this close, and maybe I ultimately the end of I dodged a bullet, I don't know, to a deal at Fox, right? To do daily soccer content, right? To do Soccer Morning for a Fox audience. They were talking about sending, this is you could stream everywhere from one device. They were talking about sending me an apparatus that would hold multiple phones so that I could stream to multiple social media platforms and video platforms every day. Now, there is a person who apparently did this for Fox, who I would not want to be associated with.
I was going to say, is he tall and redheaded?
No, not the soccer side. The college football. He was a college football guy. Now he's just a right-wing pundit type.
Oh.
Clay, what's his name?
Kicks things.
Clay Travis.
He kicks things far out, right?
That was his thing. Yeah.
Right.
And I was, now, when I say they were going to make me the Clay Travis of soccer, I don't mean that I was going to sound like Clay Travis.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
But they were that close to doing that. And then, and Jamie Trecker, there's a name. Jamie Trecker was in charge of editorial at Fox. I was this close to the contract. They ghosted us for a couple of weeks. So like, what the hell's going on? Come to find out, fired the entire editorial staff that they had, brought in whoever. And I even liked the people they hired. Like I even liked Aaron West was part of that crew. Ryan Rosenblatt was part of that crew. Kayla Knapp was part of that crew.
Yeah.
Like I liked these people that they brought in. But what happened 2 or 3 years later? They pivoted to video and fired all of them. Now
I still remember seeing them running around the stadium in Santa Clara at the U.S. Columbia game during the Copa America Centenario. Kayla and Ryan and a few other people. And obviously I still see Aaron every now and again because he's in New York. But yeah, no, it's you and I both have positive professional reasons to push people to pay for something. Subscriptions to the Inquirer in my case, subscriptions to SiriusXM in your case. And my complaint was not back in the day that we were giving the content away for free. I didn't mind it at that point. Because I worked on that side, in that side of the world. And in a lot of ways, I was a web editor for all those years, Jason, as you know, when I was working overnight shifts and stuff like that and all those weird hours in the 2000s. But when the time came where we realized we needed to charge people, we lost the ability to make a compelling case to show clearly your money goes directly to our ability to do the things.
Yeah.
That's what's been lost. And that's what I spend a lot of my time trying to convince people to do. I'm not going to criticize my colleagues here, but I work for a large operation where we do things in a lot of ways. And I think in the industry as a whole, especially in the written word portion of it, we have lost some of the ability to just make the case to people that your money goes to our doing the things.
Yeah. Okay. I think also what happened, and again, I think this is independent of soccer, right? That the way that people accessed coverage changed so fundamentally with social media and the internet, right? And I'm not even going to blame a Woj or blame some of the other beat writers who are out there posting, or rumor writers, what do you want to call them, posting everything the second they got it back in the old Twitter days. Right. I'm not even sure I'm blaming them. I kind of understand what you're trying to do there. It's competitive, right? It's a competitive business.
One of them still does, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, again, Fabrizio Romano has turned this into a cottage industry.
Yeah.
You think
I
Fabrizio
wasn't
Romano
thinking of him.
No, I know you're not, but I'm just bringing it to a modern day. You think Fabrizio
Yeah.
Romano is reporting all of those things? Please. Okay.
I have had at least one instance. I'm not going to go into it, but Jason, I think we'll probably only need about 2 seconds to figure out what it was, where I knew that I had some information that was different from what he was being fed on the other side of the Atlantic. And I had to figure out a way to get it out there. And so I had to, through some back channels, acquire his email address and email him directly and say, look, you had a word choice there that is causing some people over here to go nuts. Would you mind clarifying it? He was happy to, which I appreciated.
Right.
But I wasn't even thinking of him. I was thinking of an NFL writer who broke some hockey news recently, and I was sort of surprised even by that, even though I should.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not even swimming in those waters, generally speaking, at this point. But I think, I'm just thinking about the way that people started to expect they were going to get their information directly from the source, right? The barriers came down, and then once the barriers came down, and again, people seem not to be. And I don't love doing this wagging the finger at the audience thing, but the barriers came down, and people stopped wondering, hey, am I really getting a good story here, or am I just getting what they want to tell me?
There you go. That's it.
And again, this is not about MLS having an editorial arm and having writers. This is about the way clubs and teams and businesses, which, these leagues are, try to manipulate their narratives. I mean, that is the original concern we all had with MLSsoccer.com, right? And it still remains the thing, right? The reason that MLB created had a bunch of writers come in-house, even though, yes, maybe some editorial independence is written into contracts if they're big enough names. But the reason they did that is because, hey, it's easier to control narratives if we are the news source, if we are and again, it also speaks to our current moment in general in information and news gathering in this country, because the people who have the most money, who want to direct our attention to certain things, are now controlling the way we get that information.
I was reading on the way back from my hotel to my hotel this evening, which is why I was late. I was scrolling quickly through something on my phone about how a television network apparently today or yesterday, I've not been watching the news much, did not televise a major news event, and its audience revolted, which the network in question was not expecting.
Right.
Because it's expected the network to be pleased, it's expected the audience to be pleased by this, and found out the hard way that the audience was not pleased.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit amused by that. I don't know whether Jared would be more amused than I. I don't know if he watches that channel more than I do, but he might.
I don't know what we're talking about. This is very. I don't know where we're going.
All right. So at the risk of, I'm going to try to report the information here. Fox News did not televise Pam Bondi's hearing on the Hill.
Okay, that's what I thought you were talking about, but I don't know why Jared entered the conversation.
I believe he might have watched more Fox News in his life than I have.
I don't know that we've ever discussed it, and I, but okay.
He used to be a little more conservative than me. If my memory's right.
I don't know. I would not apply that label to him, but that's me.
And I stand correct.
No, I think he and I are mostly aligned on a lot of those issues. I mean, I think he has some things I don't. Never mind. We're not. This is not what we're not. This is not what we're doing.
Yeah,
we're not painting a political picture.
Let me again. What has happened now? To get back to the actual point before Jared comes in here and yells at me. And apologies for making some improper conclusions.
He doesn't live in Orange County, John.
Right.
Just gonna say that. Okay.
Right. It used to be the mainstream media versus the house organs, right?
Sorry, I'm laughing at that. I'm sorry. Thank you, Spider. Thank you very much. That's very funny.
It used to be the mainstream media versus the house organs.
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah.
now it is the mainstream media versus the house organs and AI slop.
Yeah, and then
one against two, and they're not teammates, but it's one side battling two on the other, which means now we really got to go play and fight.
And then you also have these small and like I said something about blogs earlier. I do think podcasts and in certain circumstances, websites, maybe more than quote unquote blogs, they're still out there. I think American soccer is still. I don't know how this works in baseball or football. Obviously, there's a lot more media wanting to cover those sports than we have in soccer. But, there are plenty of very committed people who are not working for big media orgs in soccer who show up in every call that U.S. Soccer does with Pochettino, for example, right? Or with their, this is a thing that they're committed to, and maybe they're even carving out a little bit of a business from it. And we've already talked about the independent media organizations that exist out there. And I think maybe if we're going to come to a lesson here, John, as we get ready to hit an hour, and I'm not shutting us down yet, I'm just keeping track of the time. But what we come back to is we've all got to support independent media right now if we want truly independent coverage and we want good coverage. And if Matt Doyle is going to publish his newsletter and monetize it in order to make a living, go support Matt Doyle, right? If you like what he does, pay the man for what he does. I also know he's going to be doing more stuff with Kickback, which is growing and changing and all those things. And I'm watching that with an interested eye, I will admit, right? It's like
you and me both.
Well, I mean from a relationship standpoint. I'm just kind of watching that and going, okay, and look, again, I'm in a position. I don't want people to get the wrong idea because I struggle with my own sense of my place in this industry, right? Just for a second. And again, my lane has shifted. And now I'm sitting here thinking, am I just the radio guy who sidekicks Eric Winalda? Or do I have something else to offer, something beyond that? And again, I don't know that you think about this, John, because you're a newspaper man and you've been with the same company for a long time, and it's a little bit of a different relationship, I think. But a lot of us, and John Arnold can talk about this, and I'm sure Joe Lowry can talk about this. I saw somebody mention Total Soccer Show. They, on some level, could talk about this, although they're kind of almost legacy at this point. Shout out to Taylor and those guys. You are always thinking about what is my place, what is my reach, who is my audience, how much pull do I have, what can I actually again, I have a radio job. I'm very happy I do. It doesn't mean it's enough for me to feel comfortable about my future or pay for my kids' college or whatever it might be, right? I'm not rolling so deep that I'm like, okay, that's it. That's all I need to do. So I'm out here like, I got to hustle, which is the same mentality I had back in 2009, right? I'm not so much different from that person, even though I am much more established because soccer doesn't allow for that. It doesn't let you feel.
I'm still a renter at 42 because I never know. And I'm going to say this about you, Jason, and people who are newer to the show don't understand that Jason and I have known each other for a really long time.
I don't think we have new people. I think we just have old people, John. Don't worry. Everybody here is as old as we are.
I used to the people at somebody you and I both know at US Soccer used to ask me every once in a while why you were complaining about this or that. And my response would be, look, we don't have sports talk radio on soccer in this country. And if you want there to be some, then you got to let Jason say what's on his mind. And I convinced him well enough,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well,
and it is.
You know what? I'll tell you what we lost.
Yeah.
What we've lost here, John, on some level. Okay, and it's so weird because I owe my career to the internet. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. And you know, the internet has done a lot of good. I've written pieces on how soccer is the sport of the internet, and I'll name check somebody else, Bruce McGuire,
Yes, sir.
and what the stuff he did in
Yeah.
the early days of the
Sean
internet.
Francis.
Obviously, Sean Francis, obviously big soccer. Somebody already mentioned it here when I was reviewing our past. These things are important to the current health of soccer and the way we talk about it. But the odd thing about the internet is that as much as it connected us in those days, it seems to have isolated us now. And
Mhm.
again, maybe that's just a me thing. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just a misanthrope and nobody likes me, which again, this is me on a couch, so I acknowledge, right?
Yeah,
I'm being very
that makes two of us.
okay. Well, and I'm not great at friendships anyway, right? Another thing I admit, and I'm working on in my mid 40s. So I see this and I'm like, oh, am I missing out? Because there was a time when I was connected to a lot of people and I felt we were a community, and that community cared very much about American soccer, and we were all supportive of one another. And maybe it's the job I have on the radio, or maybe it's, the family I started or whatever. But there seems to be like, instead of we're coming together and we're growing together, and it's not always going to be kumbaya, right? We're all working for the same stories and the same coverage and stuff like that. There at least was a sense that we were all kind of in this together. And we've name checked a lot of people here who I would still consider friends, even if I don't talk to them every month, every quarter, every year, even. And maybe that's happening still. Maybe that's still a thing in among some other people, and I'm just not part of it. I'm on the outside. But I do think that we have all gotten a little bit more cynical, a little bit more crusty in our not old age, but middle age. And I don't know, that's a thing I wish we didn't have. I wish this was much more of a we again, we didn't get soured by losing jobs or having people cancel our contracts or pivoting to video or whatever it might have been that caused a complete shift, right? And I'm not saying that anybody has a right to a straight line up until their future and their retirement and celebration like they're Shirley Povich. I'm just saying we
That's a
we
name.
we didn't get that. Nobody's getting that opportunity. Like, we celebrate Michael Lewis because he's been around forever, but think how hard Michael Lewis has to work right now just to scrape a little bit of attention for what he does, right? And Stephen Goff is a good example of this. And I'm glad Yahoo signed him up, and hopefully this continues and he's with Yahoo for whatever, or somebody else, right? But we don't soccer's never had a chance to build that kind of mystique around the people that cover the sport in this country. And again, I'll say that after losing Grant, it was really tough. But that's really tough for me as somebody who feels part of this community and wants to see it grow.
You've got a comment. A lot of the MLS journals have been very that one. Yeah. I'm probably one of those.
I want to read it
Again.
real quick, John. A lot
Yeah.
of the MLS journalists have been very dismissive. This should be a rallying cry for the fans as well, but the reporters don't seem to ingratiate themselves with the fans. You think that's you?
Yes, I know for a fact from the responses that I get on social media that it's me. And look, I don't run around on social media as much as I used to, in part because one of the platforms that some of the people respond to me on is a cesspool of
Yeah, I would say that.
for crypto scams, bullshit, AI, and whatever else.
We have to acknowledge, and I left before Elon even,
Right.
or as that was happening, I guess.
Right.
And we have to, like, again, I think I underestimate the value of that platform to connect us and to create a sense that there was a collective MLS or American soccer journalism fraternity, or a group of people, not all guys, but fraternity. Like, there was a community there, and we did lose that. We lost that.
Yeah.
I mean, some of us chose to leave, and you could argue we should still be there. I don't think so. You don't think so, and that is an issue. Absolutely.
I would leave that platform in an instant if I could, but I can't because because there are too many. There's literally like 3 accounts left on that platform that mainly only post there that I need to see transfer news and stuff. There's another one. It feels soccer journals reflect the viewpoint of the billionaire class and not the fans, the athletes, the workers, etc. That I will disagree with.
I will disagree with that too.
I was a chaser. I've had this conversation with some of the freelance guys and I don't want to call them bloggers, but some of the guys who are newer and younger and doing this as side gigs who cover union games. I was the chaser for 20 years, or I was a chaser for 20 years. Steve will tell you that. Grant would have told you that because those were 2 of the guys who I chased the most. And now I'm the one being chased. I accept because I work for the Inquirer.
Right.
I accept that.
Yeah.
Your
establishment, John. That's the thing. That's so weird when that happens. They're like, hey, this is years ago now. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is years ago now. We are venting and we're whatever.
Hi, Doug, by the way. Doug is in the chat. Hello, Doug.
I got called. Yeah, Doug says he's suspended from Blue Sky. Douglas, what happened? Explain that to me. I got called big journalism by, you won't be surprised to hear this, by somebody at Barstool, by whoever the soccer guy was at Barstool.
That's rich. That is extremely rich.
This is very funny. This is when Atlanta was doing a thing with Barstool with this guy. I think it goes by Sam or something. Sam's Army was maybe the name of the thing that they did. And Grant called Atlanta United out on this. And I called Atlanta United out on this. And I'm not saying I was following Grant. It just happened to be we both were expressing an opinion about that particular organization. And very soon I was a target. And I just think that was such a weird moment for me. Like, I'm big journalism. Oh, I mean, I was on the radio. I guess that counts. I guess. I don't know.
You're a famous man, my friend.
I don't feel like that. I don't feel like that at all.
It's, it makes me work harder. It makes me, try to get a couple more transfer rumors where I can, which has always been my weak spot. Antonio Yatt Jr. says we'll never have another Grant under the current landscape. No, we won't, because there's not going to be a Sports Illustrated again where you can write.
Well, like that. Also, let's remember that Grant wasn't with Sports Illustrated when he passed. That Grant was on his own when he passed, because he had to go on his own because Sports Illustrated got gobbled up by private equity and turned into an AI slop factory. It wasn't AI then, but it was still a slop factory when Grant passed. He was
sacked him in part for leading a unionization effort.
Okay, well, there you go. So Grant was hustling like he was a Cub reporter. Now he had a name and he could, he's doing what Matt Doyle's about to go do right now. That's where Grant was. Let's remember that, because I think that's an indictment of an entire industry, that a writer like Grant Wall, somebody who had name recognition, I know he was working for Fox at times and he had some gigs, but man, wild to think that that's where we were in 2022.
And I've had people say to me, fans who said to me and people in the business who said to me, this guy, Jonathan Tannenwald, is one of the best soccer writers in the country. I appreciate that. Believe me. But I'm not Steve. I'm not Grant. I'm not Doug. I'm not Paul. I'm not Henry Bushnell, who another one we haven't mentioned yet. And these guys are all good friends of mine, which is why I feel comfortable saying this publicly. I work for a local paper. I'm very lucky that I have some breadth and latitude in what I do. I can write about the national teams and do what I did, yesterday, writing about Noah Kai Banks that went up this morning because there's a World Cup coming. And so people want to read about Noah Kai Banks in Philadelphia and not just Brendan Aronson.
Yeah.
But I feel that I can still do a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I know this is going to sound weird to people. And I know, I'm glad that we have an audience right now, the 40 or so people who are watching us and listening. And I know there's going to be a lot of people listening on the podcast too. I think that a lot of people understand the evolution of this and where we come from. And this isn't just old men shaking our fists at the cloud or people bitching about things that are ultimately like first world problems, right? I hope that that's not the vibe right now, that we're just complaining about stuff. But again, there it feels wrong. It feels wrong. Like if you are just starting, and I feel, again, I said I do feel for people just starting now. And I've had people ask me for advice. And I don't know what to tell them other than don't quit, because the environment is so different than it was when I started. But I feel like it's wrong that people, and this is a choice on Doyle's part, and I imagine he could go look for a job somewhere with a news organization, with a website, with a sports channel, something, if he wanted to, and he might still do that, right? But I think it's wrong that people like Pablo Maurer, that people like Brian Strauss, people like Matthew Doyle, people that didn't choose to leave, that still want to do this, that are excellent at what they do, are forced to either edit somebody else's book, help a startup soccer club. Obviously, Pablo got a good job with the Guardian because he knows Alexander Abnos, and Alexander Abnos knows what he's doing. But Pablo was unemployed for a while. Right? I texted with Pablo. He wasn't feeling good about his situation.
No.
Right? The fact that those guys who have done it, those people, and there's obviously women in this equation as well, have done it for that long at that level, and then find themselves just completely on the outs, is a travesty. And you can say, oh, woe is them, go get a different job if you want to be that way. But that's us losing something as a soccer community in this country. There's no argument there.
Yeah. Yeah. In the comments, by the way, I just got compared to Stephen A. Smith for the first time in about 18 and a half years, which was the last time I saw him walk through the Inquirer newsroom back in the day.
Wow. Yeah. What a story that is.
We have another KYTL8PS posts another comment that I'd like him or her or them, I don't know exactly who it is, to clarify. If they would, when have you seen an MLS journal call an owner cheap? Are you referring to the people who wrote for the league website or people like me?
Guys, I'm gonna say it's KY. KY, who I think is a regular on the Best Soccer Show. Okay, I'm gonna say this. You're wrong about this, dude. You're wrong about this. And I don't know what you're reading. I don't know what you're choosing to read, but this seems like a selection issue. This doesn't feel. I get so frustrated, John, and this was years of this, hearing people complain about my positions or say things that I hadn't said or that I wasn't actually, my opinions. And in your case, it's a little bit of a trickier question, right? And again, I think people coming from a reporter's angle sometimes struggle. Maybe you don't hear, but I know Brian has struggled with this in the past. I know Steven doesn't always love delivering opinion, right? This is when you're reporting a story, you don't always. Jeff Carlisle, I think, sometimes is questioning himself when delivering opinion. You're asking for editorial content. You're asking for people who have opinions, pundits, or however you want to describe them. And I'm out here, and plenty of other people are out there, right? Paul Tenorio, Sam Stejskal, when he was writing about MLS, right? Yeah. These people were willing to hold the league's feet to the fire on a regular basis. The problem is there weren't enough of them for it to feel like it was always burning, right? It was just 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 maybe writers who had a profile to kind of rise above it. And again, no offense to Matt or Andrew or Borg or any of those people. Greg Lawless, they weren't going to be doing it, right? This is what you were saying, John. They weren't going to be doing it.
Well, and Doyle, and I'll give Doyle credit because he would do every team's offseason needs, whatever. And yes, he did have the latitude at times on the site to say the union or the Revs or whoever need to go out and sign a big gun. And he was allowed to do that. And fortunately, MLS has grown to a point where Jay Sugarman and Bob Kraft, and I mentioned those two because those are the two teams that I just mentioned. But, that owners of MLS teams were willing to be admonished gently on the league's website for their level of spending.
Well, and look, and there have been moments, and I can't recall them specifically. There have been moments when criticism of the league was almost mandatory for something that happened within the league, whether it's the iron front flags. I mean, again, okay, let's talk about, we can talk about Save the Crew a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
those were tough moments, I think, for those people, right? It's not, I'm sure they had opinions, and I'm sure they would have happily expressed them if they could have. And again,
Yeah.
this is the issue with them covering themselves, but I don't blame them for being locked down in that situation. There were plenty of people on the outside of MLSsoccer.com who were, again, calling out Major League Soccer, calling out owners, calling out Don Garber, right? I've interviewed Don Garber a lot of times. It's been a while. I've interviewed Don Garber a bunch of times, both, and I've never said, "Oh, I can't ask that question of Don. That's not the right." I got to be nice to Don Garber. Never once in my career have I done that, and I feel comfortable with that, no matter what people think.
I've interviewed Don too, and to his credit, he usually answers the questions that I ask him, which not everybody does.
He's a master of answering those questions, right? You know you're going to get something. It's just not going to be,
and he also knows when the question is coming from me that he probably ought to answer it,
and
which I appreciate.
That is a thing. I would say that maybe, and what we might lose when Don leaves, for all the stuff that people might want to say about Don Garber, and I think this is in a general sense how we cover MLS, even though that's only one part of American soccer, is there are people who understand that that's the job that we have, that you have, and are ready to receive that, right? Their job is to either deflect, answer in a way that is beneficial to the organization they represent, whatever it is. That's their job. Their job is to figure out how to answer the question. My job is to ask it. Right. And I think maybe that's where that's also what we're missing. Right. Is that it doesn't mean we have to dislike each other, but there has to be antagonism in the system. And maybe we are losing that a little bit.
Nick Murray was asking me to post a piece that I wrote from a couple of years ago, and you can't post links in the YouTube chat, so it's not going to work. But no, it's it is not as easy as it looks. We are the ducks gliding on the water and frantically spinning our feet underneath it. I want to say one other thing, though, that I forgot to say earlier when you were talking about how isolated we all are now and how splintered everything else these days. Spider's a lot of time I would say Donald. I trust people named Don. I'm not sure I trust people named Donald, but there's a little bit of enough of a difference there. We're all splintered off in a million pieces, and we think the internet has done this. But it's not just that, but that's certainly the tool that has been leveraged for that purpose. It's why I go into our newsroom every couple of weeks to see other humans when I have time.
Yeah.
It's one of the privileges of working at a newspaper is that you can go into a newsroom and see other people, and they all do different things, and some of them write about food, and some of them write about City Hall, and some of them write about schools and business and what else, and we all can sit around and chat about all the things we do and have a great time, and occasionally even work together across all the different beats, as we call them, and stuff like that. And for you, you've got a family and a house and a car and all those things that I don't have yet, but I did run into you once in person in the fall, as did Emily and a few other people who you know, at a game at Audi Field.
Yes.
And you were very happy, and I didn't forget that.
No, John, again, you wonder what people actually want to hear about, but John has generously allowed me to stay in his apartment when I've been doing soccer things in Philadelphia, right? There is that connection. There's that fraternity, that thing that we've done this, we've seen it, we've been through it. And as like I said, I think of people that I haven't seen in years as friends of mine because we have that shared experience. And I'm glad that you are a consistent presence on this show and allow me to sort of remember those times because, we saw each other in person at Audi for the first time in a while. I saw some people at the World Cup draw that I hadn't seen in a long time. It was good to see those people. That's why I wanted to go, right? That's why I want to go to those things. Yeah. Travel has been very different since COVID for me in terms of my career. So I don't get to do as much as that as I used to. I haven't been to to coaches convention, which no longer has MLS draft, so isn't as big of a deal for a lot of us. I haven't been to an MLS Cup final in a while. I haven't, been able to do the things that were sort of the touch points for all of this. When I would see Doug McIntyre, when I see Avis Gullersep, who probably doesn't travel anymore because he doesn't need to, who, all these people, like, I'm so thankful that I've been able to do this for almost 20 years. I am in a place where I can count my blessings and be thankful. Although, again, as I mentioned, I only have health insurance because my wife has health insurance. But
I haven't gone freelance.
But I want more for everyone else, right? I want more for not just new people coming into the industry who deserve an opportunity to find their path. I want more for the people who have done the work and are the bedrock of soccer coverage in this country. And I'm going to say it again, and I don't know if this is going to get back to him, and I guess I can certainly reach out and see what's going on. The situation, the way the industry has treated Brian Strauss is atrocious. It's atrocious. I mean, I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to talk about it because it makes me sad, right? Because Brian is one of the best soccer writers we have ever had, period. And yet, and again, it's not, I don't think it's an indictment of Brian. I think it's an indictment of the industry. It's an indictment of the system. It's an indictment of the people that aren't willing to do the right thing and hire the best people because they're either chasing something like video or they're chasing something else. I don't know. And again, MLSsoccer.com, who 15 years ago decided the right thing for them to do was to hire a bunch of people to the organization, has now killed off that team, right? They have systematically destroyed that situation. And even though I may have issues with the idea as a concept, I certainly understand that lots of soccer fans in this country, possibly, millions of soccer fans, got something significant out of what they did. And for the league to decide that their bottom line needs to cut whatever Matt Doyle was making, whatever some of these other people were getting. And again, Dave Gass, go back to people talk about extra time. I know Weeby's still there, but he's not doing that anymore. They don't let him do that anymore. Like those things, that's a problem, right? That's a problem.
And oh, by the way, as Pablo reported recently, however many Spanish language broadcasters, producers on site, et cetera, and so on, who are going to make, if anybody in MLS headquarters is listening to this show, cover your ears. You're going to make the broadcast product significantly worse, and that is what you have been hawking for the entire length of the Apple deal, is the quality of the broadcast product, and you've just gone and made it demonstrably worse, and you can't run from it. And President us two and many others will not let you.
Yeah, I know we have to find a stopping point. We're almost an hour and a half into this, and I will. Okay, and I by the way, KY, I respect what you're doing. You're expressing your opinion. I got no problem with that. My argument is that if the U.S. soccer media reflected the viewpoint of the everyday fan, they would have more support in return.
That's not our job.
No,
not my job, at least.
It's not. Well, sports talk radio kind of does have that job on some level, or at least it's supposed to foster debate. And I think if you listen to my old show, and I don't know if KY did, but I know that some people, Dan was saying he listened to my old. If you listen to my old show, that's what I tried to do, right? I came from a tradition. As much as I read the Washington Post and the Sports Illustrated and all these papers and wanted to be a writer and still think of myself as a writer on some level, I also grew up on sports talk radio, and I wanted that for American soccer. And I appreciate you, John, telling people, hey, let Jason do what he does because we need this. This is part of the if you want this sport to be like those other sports, this is what they do. I don't need to be WIP, right? No. I don't need to be WIP, but I need to be something like that. I need to be something.
You know what? And I think of Jared too. And again, apologies to him for what I said earlier, because he's got a role to play in this too. You've been in Washington for how long now?
30 years.
Okay. I'm going to throw a name at you and Doug that is not WIP, but is, and I haven't lived in DC for a long time, so I haven't listened to the Sports Junkies and a bunch of the other guys have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
The greatest sports radio host of my life You think I'm going to say Tony? He's a pot. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
Tony,
a guy with
but
with a
Tony
call-in
wasn't-
show. I'm about people with a call-in show here, but
Okay, all right.
Ken Beatrice.
Kane Beatrice, yeah, it's a little before my time, John, just in terms of the relative, like how relatively popular he was. But I know of Ken Beatrice, I certainly do.
Yeah.
Right? I would also say Steve Zabin gets a mention in this conversation as well. If you know Steve Zabin,
I know. Yes.
Okay. I'm not
Sure.
saying that anybody should want to emulate Steve Zabin necessarily, but he also he played the game, right? This is the thing, right? I want people to understand that it's a tough job on either end, whether you are doing the hard reporting, which is generally the hard reporting. You tell people what's happening. Your job is not, again, you'll get a podcast from Paul and Sam where they do opine on MLS news and signings and rules and that thing. You'll get again, I started my career as an opiner, right? I was writing opinion. I wasn't writing game copy. Like I wasn't doing those things are different, right? We need beat reporters to tell us what's happening. John is still probably dealing with a major story of the Philadelphia Union. It's not his job to say what the Union should do about that or what Major League Soccer should do about that within the confines of his newspaper. That's not your job, generally speaking.
And if just because I'm not writing anything, people have asked me this in the last couple of days. This is about why Ernst Tanner, the sporting director, is still on leave. I have called his lawyers multiple times. I have called the league multiple times. I have called the Philadelphia Union multiple times. Anything changing? No. Anything changing? No. Anything changing? No. Is there a timeline? We're not telling you. I can't write something.
That means the lawyers are involved. What are you going to do?
It means the lawyers are very involved.
Yeah. But again, my point is we have lost, because you mentioned all those beat reporters who have been taken off the job or whose newspapers have decided to close up their departments. In the case of the Washington Post, completely killed off. That, by the way, I hope people understand how insane that is. Like I really hope people understand how insane it is. The Washington Post of all papers decided to kill their sports department.
Go read. There are many things you can read about this in a lot of different outlets, but there are two in the Atlantic in particular, if you can get to it. Ashley Parker, who, like me, grew up in the DC area dreaming of writing for the Post and got to, and the sports writer with the single sharpest pen in my life, Sally Jenkins, who is just beyond brilliant in how good she is as a writer, and I'm fortunate to know her and have met her a number of times, and B, can murder you with a typewriter.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As she has done to the NCAA, as to FIFA and a number of places over the years, and took her former employer, the Washington Post, of 30 plus years to the woodshed over this.
Yeah.
Please go read those and understand why a whole lot of people are in a world of pain right now. And as Dan Steinberg, who's another guy who was brilliant at the Post for many years, said recently,
Sports Bog. Shout out Dan Steinberg. Wow.
Somebody in town really ought to be smart enough to know that this is speaking of navel gazing, this is a very Washington thing. There are a lot of sports fans in DC with money to pay for media content, and they'd really like to pay for media content about something on Washington sports now that the Post is dead. So would somebody please do it and go hire all these people?
Yeah. Well, look, if I, this is another thing, by the way, as you become a guy who was worked in media for a long time and been dependent on people parsing out a little bit here and there, like maybe I need to start my own thing. And then you try that and you're like, oh, this shit's really hard. This is really hard.
You have no health insurance, which is why I've never done it. I've had people tell me I should go freelance, that I can make enough money. I've said, what am I going to do for health insurance? Not only do I have it, I use mine.
If anybody knows somebody with about $10 million to throw at a project, let us know, or let me know. John,
yeah, really.
I won't pull John into this yet, but I certainly would try to recruit him. But yeah, that's why I would love to be able to do all. Anyway, all right, we are, and I had a whole other thought about a whole direction we could go in, and I'm sure there's lots of things we could be talking about right now. If you did not hear one of your favorite soccer media people mentioned, know that we were thinking about them. We were absolutely thinking about them.
I'll throw two quick names out there because they were mentioned in the chat. Jason Anderson was Doug is one for sure. Some ways back, Dan Kane mentioned Meg Swanick, my friend and colleague here in Philadelphia,
Yes.
who is along with her Substack, has freelanced for the Inquirer a bit over the years, which I've appreciated. It's a lot of people, and we do this because we're all, even the Doug McIntyres and the Paul Tenorios of the world, we're all still fighting. And I think even the older among us who might not whether or not we have to, we're doing it anyway. Because it's how we're wired, and we're going to keep doing it that way because we think that we still, even in the year 2026, when there's a World Cup coming, we think we still have to.
Yeah. I would like to, again, I know this probably doesn't matter. None of them are going to listen to this, but I feel it necessary. I'd like to mention Mark Ziegler. I'd like to mention Tom Timmerman. I would like to mention Jesus de Jesus Ortiz, who I used to have run-ins with, is more of a baseball guy, but definitely covered MLS and the Dynamo for a while.
Corey Wilson, also in Houston.
There you go.
Mark Ziegler's in San Diego, for people who don't know.
Yeah.
Tom Timmerman's been in St. Louis for a long time.
He's one of the older guys around and covering soccer in a town that cares about soccer, which I appreciate a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's a lot of people I'm missing here.
Sam McDowell in Kansas City.
That's a good one. That's absolutely a good one. Again, this is just a day after what happened with Matt Doyle, as we all learned his departure from MLSsoccer.com, to think about sports media. And I hope you didn't hear just a couple of old media guys bitching about soccer media, because I think, it can be a little bit of that, and but it's not about us, right? It's about this idea that American soccer needs coverage. It needs people who know what they're doing. It needs people who care about the sport and are willing to do this, because as John just said, we do this, or certainly the people that are on the beat in a lot of places do it because they want to. I've had my wife tell me, you should go get a more stable job. You should go you should go write copy for somebody. And I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't want to. I don't know how to do any of that. This is important to me. And I don't know what I am without this. Like, I don't mean just the job. I mean the sport. Like, I don't know what I am if I'm not covering the sport. So hopefully people got something out of this, John.
And if you did, to your point a moment ago, if you did just hear two guys in the media bitching about the media, then we at least hope it was entertaining.
Yeah, hopefully it was something. And again, some of you are old enough to be like, oh yeah, some of you are the Leonardo DiCaprio meme pointing at, hey, I just heard, somebody mentioned Sports Blog mentioned. Yes. Shout out to Dan Steinberg and the Sports Blog and all of that. Really good. John, thank you very much for stepping in tonight. We appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you to everybody who listened. If you want to join up with the Patreon, the community is incredible. I've got a plan to make some extra stuff over there and keep that going. So, pay attention to the Patreon as I make more bonus content, as I find space in my life to do those things, just to kind of catch you up. Something I might have talked about on the Patreon bonus content, but we'll just tell you here, because we're just talking about life and this job and everything that we're doing. I expect to be with SiriusXM FC through the balance of 2026 and maybe into 2027. I'll leave you to decide what that might actually mean, but obviously it's a World Cup year, and I'm hoping that I'm part of that. If you're not listening to SiriusXM FC, it's good. It is. It's good. We don't talk enough MLS for my liking, but it's fun. Eric Woodall and I are doing a very fun and funny and entertaining and informative show, I think, every day, usually from 4 to 7, sometimes from 5 to 8 Eastern time on SiriusXM FC 157. If you are looking for more American soccer focused content from your friend Jason, Morning Kick Around is where you need to go. Now, Morning Kick Around on YouTube or as a podcast, if you want to take it in that way, it is now mostly focused on the growth of American soccer, and that's largely through expansion franchises and stadium building and things popping up across mainly USL, although we do talk about some of the amateur leagues as well. So UPSL, NPSL, League for Clubs, Midwest Premier League. They all kind of get mentioned on that show on a semi-regular basis. We are in the process of trying to grow that thing. And that means we're going a little bit above and beyond. A week from today, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on the Morning Kick Around YouTube channel, we're doing a little bit of a marathon show. So 3 straight hours of talking about American soccer things. We're going to play some games, very much in the spirit of the Best Soccer Show. We're going to unpack a lot of the things that are happening in American soccer right now. We're going to do a little history as well. I have a couple of guests coming in to do that. I am currently working on a couple of fairly big name guests who I don't want to tell you about because I don't want them not to come and then I feel bad about that. So just know that some people on television calling games, talking about American soccer could be on that very show. So check that out. Morning Kick Around, the marathon show. We're calling it Kickathon, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time next Wednesday. Now we will still also have a Friday show, a regular Friday show, and a regular Monday show for Morning Kick Around. For that, we are working on a plan to go do a live show in another place. We already did Albuquerque, New Mexico in 2025. We are looking to add another place. I also don't want to tell you about that one yet until it's 100% signed, sealed, and delivered, but no, it is in the Northeast, and it is a lower division soccer team making some waves in their particular community. I'll leave you to decide who that might be. I will also promote my newsletter. I don't know what's going on. Jason Davis Soccer Eagle. Just go pump that into Google or your search engine and you should find it. It's on Ghost, which is where Matt Doyle lives now, where a number of people, I think Sounder at Heart is a Ghost production as well. That's mostly just my musings on the things of the moment. I'm debating the direction of Jason Davis Soccer Eagle. I don't know if I'm going to lock in on any one thing. It's usually just whatever comes to mind on a Wednesday or a Thursday. It's a Friday drop for the newsletter. So check that out. Tell your friends, sign up, click all the links that I put in there to help other people in American soccer. Cause that's kind of the vibe of it as well, is that I want to spread the gospel and get more people talking about the things that are happening that I think are interesting. That usually means other people making things, supporting good causes too. There might be some things occasionally that pop up there that are more beyond soccer. If you want things beyond soccer, maybe the Patreon of the Best Soccer Show is a place to go for that as well. And you'll get some bonus content over there. I feel like I'm leaving something out. I feel like I'm not mentioning something. Like there's another thing I'm thinking about. There's another thing I'm covering. I don't know. Anyway, soccer continues. We will continue. We don't give up. Thank you to John Tannenwald for coming on this episode. Thank you for listening. I'll let you know very soon when we can have the return of the Rodius. Have a great night.
Take us to DEFCON 3.
Oh, it's incredible! WNBC.
Where's that guy? Is that JTT?
OFFBG13, it's JTT!
Who?
Damn, dog, that's in a boat.
What was that
Oh, here we go, saucing them up. Hit him, what?
Get to the chopper! J